Hi everybody, my name is Kayla Stukins. Today I'm going to be reviewing the second book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So last Monday on my channel I posted the review for the first book in the Harry Potter series, the Sorcerer's Stone. And the following Mondays, so next Monday will be the 3rd, and the Monday after that will be the 4th, yada yada yada, I'm going to be posting the rest of the series. I also did, so 2 Mondays ago I did a ranking of all of the Harry Potter books, so if you want to go check that out as well, you'll find that on my channel. Yeah, so I'm going to be reviewing this book, so it is going to be spoiler filled, and I'm also maybe talking about a little bit of spoilers for the rest of the books, so if you haven't read all the books or watched all the movies, I would recommend maybe not watching these videos because they will be spoiling pretty much everything. I have not read The Cursed Child, so I won't be spoiling any of that. I haven't read it yet. I probably will read it after I read all these, but I haven't read that yet. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the review. So firstly, I'm going to be I'm also not going to hold this book up the entire time, so if I put it down, I put it down. The first thing I want to talk about is the beginning of the book. So the beginning chapters of the book are normally always Harry with the Dursleys, and it's also always really sad because it's just rehashing how abused Harry is from his family. They make this big dinner for, Dudley and their family, and they give Harry basically like 2 slices of bread. Like, they give him absolutely nothing. And of course, no one remembers his birthday. He spends his birthday alone every single year, just like he did last year. But it is funny to start see Harry fighting back a little bit, being a little sassy, and we also get to see how scared the Dursleys are of it again. Like, Harry he kind of says, "Oh, say the magic word," and they all like have an aneurysm. They're so afraid of magic and to an obscene amount. So it's interesting to see how scared they are. And then, after Dobby gets Harry in trouble, the Dursleys pretty much try to starve him and his owl. They're even worse to him, after finding out Harry is not allowed to do magic after he gets that letter from Hogwarts. They're just terrible people. So I'm always ready to get out of that part of the book because it's just so sad. I mean, we leave the first book with Harry excited to go back to Hogwarts. He's sad he has to go back to the Dursleys, but he's really happy to get back to Hogwarts and back to his friends. And he finally has friends for the first time. Dudley can't stop these kids from being friends with him. Ron and Hermione. And then, Dobby hides his letters. Dobby says, "Harry, you can't go back." And Harry's like, "What? This is the one place I feel home, and I don't even get any letters from my friends." He's so mad, rightly so, when Dobby stops Harry from going. But of course, he's a 14-year-old boy, so he has a thrill for adventure, and he's gonna go back to Hogwarts anyway, so that's fine. And Dobby's situation is so heartbreaking. He is literally shaking whenever he's going to tell Harry these things. And the revelation that he is the Malfoy's house elf, and that he was probably putting himself in danger telling Harry this, but he just wanted him to be safe, And then, in the beginning, in these chapters, we see Harry have a dream that he's like trapped inside of an enclosure. And I just thought it was a cool connection to the first book when Harry sees the snake trapped in the enclosure and he lets it out with his magic. Because he says in the first book he sympathized with the snake. He understands how the snake feels because he himself feels trapped. So I just thought it was a cool connection. And it's in this book we find out that Harry is a parcel mouth and can speak to snakes. So it's just like a cool little connection all around that I like, that I haven't really caught before. And in the first chapters, also kind of throughout the book, we see a lot of like, here's what happened last book, here's a little summary, here are the words that maybe you don't understand. They explain Quidditch again, they explain what the word Muggle means again. They just explain kind of what happened, just a little summary in case you forgot. Alright, so now we're moving on to the chapters, or just the chapters where Harry is at the Burrow for the first time, the Weasley's home. So Harry, for the first time in the audience, sees a house that is completely run on magic. Everything in that house is magical. And Ron is kind of shy, he's like, it's not much, my house, because he's always ashamed he's poor, but Harry loves it. Harry loves Ron and his house, despite Ron being made fun of for being poor, but Ron, Harry loves it. He thinks it's so interesting. Arthur also mentions Mundungus Fletcher, and he says, they know Mundungus Fletcher tried to curse me with his, curse me when my back was turned or whatever, which is just funny because I'm pretty sure in the 7th book, Mundungus Fletcher is the one who like turns them in or whatever, who betrays them in the Battle of the Seven Potters, and they all drink Polyjuice Potion and turn into Harry, which I thought was cool because he also introduced Polyjuice Potion in this book. Little connections, it's just cool how connected the whole world is. And then he gets confronted about the car, and he's like, well, Arthur says, well, technically, even though I made it fly, if I was intending never to fly it, then technically it's not illegal. Which reminded me a little bit about the Sorcerer's Stone in the first book. You have to want it, but not want to use it in order to get it. It was just, I don't know, little cool connections. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't know, I think it's cool. And Harry says, you know, the most unusual thing about this whole thing is that everyone at the Weasleys seemed to like him. We also get to see a lot of, you know, the kids hanging out and having fun, and we get to see Ginny being really nervous around Harry. And, you know, there's that funny scene where Molly's kind of scolding the kids about taking the car, and Arthur kind of congratulates him. Molly scolds him. It's always an interesting dynamic to see how, you know, like wizards like Arthur and Ron are intrigued by ordinary muggle things while Harry is intrigued by wizard things. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Diagon Alley. So seeing the kids wander around Diagon Alley is something you never get over. It's so cool. Every book, every time I read a book, it's just exploring wizard things is really cool. We also get hinted that at the beginning that Malfoy and his family are more than just talk. You know, they're actually might be Death Eaters. They're not good people. They see them around in Borgin and Burke's, which is like a bad place to be, you know, down Nocturne Alley. Not good people, right? But we also get to see Draco sees the Vanishing Cabinet for the first time in this chapter, or in the beginning chapters when he's like trying to look for Harry or whatever, like Harry's right in the cabinet, which is interesting because we also see the second pair to the Vanishing Cabinet in this book. Peeves and Sir Nicholas kind of push it off of the ceiling, or like they push it off of a ledge and it falls and breaks, which is how it gets broken and why Draco has to fix it in the 6th book. It's just cool we can see both of them in the same book. Also good to see that Draco is kind of just a product of his environment, which again doesn't excuse it, but it explains it, that his family, his parents probably influenced a lot of his beliefs. And we get to see, you know, the scene in the bookshop where Gilderoy is giving out everyone's books, everybody books, and he's like super pretentious, and he's like, oh, Harry, come up here and give a few seconds of fame, you know what I mean? And Harry genuinely doesn't want his fame, you know. Harry is really humble about it, but Draco, of course, still bullies him about it. And, you know, the Weasleys, for how much money they don't have, you know what I mean? They're just really mean people. But it is really funny when you get to see, like, all the girls getting really smitten about Lockhart, and then, you know, Arthur and Lucius, they literally have wands in their hand, but they're like on the ground, like fighting, like physically fighting. Just funny. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the crew at Hogwarts. So this part is going to kind of be all over the place. I mean, this whole video is kind of going to be all over the place, but I try to keep it like together. But a lot happens at Hogwarts. The next part we're going to talk about after that is like Chamber of Secrets and all that. So we'll just talk about everything else that kind of happens. So we're at the part where Harry and Ron are trying to get through the barrier and Dobby closes it off. And instead of thinking, I know this is what a lot of people say, but instead of thinking, let's wait literally longer than 30 seconds before we go and steal the car, let's just wait until our parents make it back, or try literally anything, write a letter, just do anything. But of course they're 12, so they're thinking, let's just do what we want, you know what I mean? So they get in the car, and like as they're driving, we really get to see Harry and Ron bonding again and, you know, doing normal kid things. You know, it's cute. We see them drive straight into the Whomping Willow, which again comes more into play in the 3rd book. But we get to see them, you know, it's a funny scene seeing them getting beaten up, which sounds morbid, but it's funny. And we get to see Ron's wand break. You know, let's go off tangent for a second. Talking about Ron's wand break, it's very funny to see Ron kind of struggle with everything because he doesn't know how to use his wand. It just shows how important a wizard's wand is in this world. Like, they can't function without it, which goes back to in the 1st book when they're going through the trap door and the different things, and Hermione's like, they could be the best wizard in the world, but they may not have any logic. You know, some wizards are, their crutch is their wand. They don't know how to do anything without their wand. I just thought it was an interesting little thing, and it was cool to see Ron struggling a little bit. And unfortunately, you know, Ron and Harry miss the sorting, which is sad because I love seeing the Sorting Hat song. But Ron also misses his sister's sorting, which is very, very sad. She gets into Gryffindor, but he doesn't get to see it. He has one sibling that he gets to see their sorting, which is Ginny, because she's younger than him, and he doesn't get to see it. It's just really sad. But going back to the whole fame thing, it is cool to see that Harry and Ron are kind of legends at the school because they flew the car illegally. So it's cool to see that they're actually like hyped up because of something they actually did. You know, like Harry can finally be like, yeah, I did that. You know, the same thing with his Quidditch playing. Everyone loves him because of Quidditch. It's just cool. And we get to see more of Percy and Hermione kind of being stuck up and being like, well, you shouldn't have done that. And it's like, okay, we get it. But we do get to see a lot of Percy being really ambitious in a lot of these books. So I'm really wondering if Percy was supposed to be, like, if he would have done well in Slytherin. You know, not because he's a kind of mean guy later in the books, but because, like, he's really ambitious and he values ambition. So maybe, like, Slytherin? And the scene where Ron gets the Howler is really funny. And I love that they actually had a consequence, that, like, they got in trouble, they missed the sorting. Ron's dad hasn't had an inquiry at work. You know, it wasn't just, oh, the main characters did something dumb, but they didn't get like punished for it. They actually had consequences, which I think was really cool. Going back to Lockhart, he's really funny. You know, he tries to act like he's more famous than Harry in this world. He's like, oh, Harry, you've got a few seconds of fame, but let me show you how to really get fame like me. You know what I mean? He's just a funny guy, seeing all the female witches kind of smitten over him, you know, making them buy all of his works to like go to school, and just being like, he's just like, oh, I can obviously solve that, even though he literally can't. It's funny. He's a funny character, and when he turns out to be evil later, kind of makes sense. He's got a big head, so of course he would like do some crimes, you know what I mean? You know, seeing Ron kind of roll his eyes anytime Hermione mentions how cute he is, or like gets really blushy around him, which I think is funny because maybe he's getting a little jealous, because, you know, we do find out that they end up together later on, you know, so it's like, you know, you can see Colin Creevey falling around Harry and, you know, asking about all these questions because he's a Muggle-born. I think, yeah, he's Muggle-born. So it's interesting, again, because in the first one, I talked about my first review, if you want to go check that out. Having Harry being someone who's not from the wizarding world and having everyone explain what these things are in the wizarding world to him, you again have a reason to explain to the audience what these things are, you know, in narration. So I thought it was cool because now you have Colin to explain these things to again, to explain what Quidditch is again, all these different things. Which is why it made it so sad when Colin was petrified, because he always wanted to be around Harry, and it was just, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was actually a really fun character. I think he's funny. We also get to see the use of the word mudblood for the first time, the slur, and, you know, everyone kind of reacts to it. You know, Fred and George even, maybe they don't even that close to Hermione really, but they know it's Ron's best friend, and they know how bad that word is. I think they would have defended anyone. Harry and Hermione don't even know what this word means, but they know it's bad. You know, everyone knows it's bad. They tell Hagrid what he called her, and he immediately reacts. You know, it's just a very foul word. But what I don't understand is Ron sometimes goes around and says the word, not like a derogatory way, but he was like, when he calls you mudblood or whatever, like, don't say it. Why can Ron say it? Like, you're a pureblood wizard. Don't say that. We also hear Hagrid kind of be like, well, maybe everyone thinks that the Defense Against the Dark Arts job is cursed, and when later in the 7th book we find out that it is cursed, or maybe the 6th book, we find out that it is cursed, which I thought was just an interesting little thing. You know, I finally get to figure out why Hagrid was kicked out of school. You know, we get to learn more about Filch's predicament as well, why he, you know, is so, just that he doesn't have a lot of magic, because I'm always like, why, if he's cleaning this place, why doesn't he just use his magic? And why did they give Filch the job as cleaner when you could just have someone with magic cleaning up stuff? They make a squib clean up the entire place. We meet Moaning Myrtle at the Death Day party, and I always love the Death Day party because it's always cool to see like what the ghosts get up to at Hogwarts, or just really see what like anybody gets up to at Hogwarts when we're not following Harry, you know, like, because normally we just see him and his friends wandering around, but I love when we get to explore other parts of the castle. We see like the ghost having like events and parties and like parades and stuff. It's super cool. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets. So when we first see the blood written on the wall, like the Chamber of Secrets has been opened, enemies of the air beware. Why do people question Harry? Why would Harry align with Voldemort? That's so stupid. That is so dumb. Or like, I guess I don't know, it's Harry, but like, why would he, or it's Voldemort. Why would he do that to his friend? Draco literally walks in front and says, enemies of the air beware, you'll be next, Granger, or Mudbloods, or whatever. He literally says it, right? Like, why would you not question him immediately? Why do they all be like, oh, of course it's Harry? Like, why would you not? I don't understand. Especially, everyone pretty much knows Malfoy and his family's stance on, like, blood purity and, you know, their hatred of Muggles and Muggleborns. Why would you immediately not be like, oh, it's Draco or anybody? Like, why would you think Harry? I don't know. And we get to see a lot, or just, this is the first instance we see Ginny getting really sad after it. You know, they try to write it off that, oh, she's just a cat person, so that's why she's sad about Mrs. Norris. But I love that we see her getting sad or disturbed after every petrifying, you know what I mean? After every time someone gets petrified. Because, like, it's because she feels bad about what she's doing. Maybe she doesn't know, but she can sense that she's doing something wrong. Also, you know what I don't get? The one thing Hermione couldn't remember was the Chamber of Secrets. She didn't know what it was or who did it. It was like in the first book when she didn't know who Nicholas Flamel was. She knows everything but the things we need her to know. You know what I mean? Like, we need you to know these things, and she can go, well, I read this in this book, and this book, and that book, but not the things we need her to know. Girl. And I love how it very easily could have been Harry being the heir of Slytherin. Like, as you read the book, it kind of lines up. Harry can speak parcel tongue, which is a known trait of Salazar Slytherin. Harry, you know, has people that are being attacked or people that Harry has, like, made angry or, like, gotten angry at, you know what I mean? It just is always in the wrong place at the wrong time. It just makes sense. I feel like if I was following another person's perspective of this, I would, too, think it was Harry. It's just intriguing. It's also sad to see that Hagrid is accused both times of opening the Chamber of Secrets, even though obviously he didn't do it, you know, and he's innocent. I hate how there's such a stigma or such prejudice against half-giants. You know, we see that a lot in the third book as well, with the prejudice against werewolves with Lupin. It's just so sad that they just think it's them, or think they're bad people because they are not fully human. Now we'll talk a little bit about Polyjuice Potion. So when they were getting the spell, or getting the book that has a spell for Polyjuice Potion, they were stealing ingredients for it. Why don't they just use his cloak, his invisibility cloak? They have it and they use it later, but why don't they just use it for everything they need? They can do whatever they want under that invisibility cloak. It makes no sense for them to, they don't even bring it up, be like, why don't we use this? They don't bring it up once. They use it later in the book, but why don't they use it now? Like, they could use it. I don't understand. There's also great character development for Hermione when even the boys are unsure about using Polyjuice Potion, and Hermione's like, well, we did it for a reason, let's use it. You know what I mean? She is willing to break the rules in order to get what they think is, or do what they think is right. Which is a cool character development, because in the beginning of the first book, she was not willing to break rules at all. She said, we're not doing this. No. But now she's encouraging it because she knows it's the right thing to do, or she thinks it is. And we get to see how smart the Golden Trio is as a group. You know, yes, they broke rules, but they also were able to conjure or just brew this really complex potion just in this school bathroom. And, you know, after they take the Polyjuice Potion, we get to see, you know, the Slytherin dormitories for the first time, and to see how Draco acts without, you know, being out in public and, you know, constantly trying to bully everyone. We get to see him just in his natural habitat, just chillaxing, you know, not putting, like, you know what I mean? All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Riddle, Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, and the Basilisk. So one thing I really like is that Riddle really gets you to like him. You know, he won a award for the school. He's really, like, charming. He makes you like him. He shows you, he's like, you know, let me do you a good favor and show you what the Chamber of Secrets is. Show you everything. Bring you into the past. Let me just show you this. And, you know, Harry believes him. And I think it's funny because when they first hear Tom Riddle's name and know he did something to service the school, they jokingly be like, well, what if Tom killed Myrtle? You know what I mean? They kind of joke about it, but he literally did. You know, like his snake killed Myrtle. I think it's funny that, like, they make a joke and it, like, genuinely is it. Harry also says he feels a really strange connection to just Tom Riddle's name, not even to his person, but just to his name, you know what I mean, and eventually to his person. But I think it's funny because like it is a foreshadowing to Harry being a Horcrux and to the diary being a Horcrux. You know, he has a lot in common with Voldemort, Tom Riddle. You know, they both look similar. They can both speak Parseltongue, and they both were raised by Muggles that treated them very poorly. The diary is also very intriguing. It's like a diary that you can literally talk to, and it can talk back to you. We get to see Ginny being really nervous around the diary and trying, you know, she's the one that throws it away. And when Harry shows it to somebody and she sees it, she freaks out, you know, because she's like, she doesn't want to get in trouble, you know, even though it's not her fault. You know, it's also when we start to really question why Ginny's freaking out, because when she freaks out about the petrifications, people getting petrified, that kind of makes sense. You know, everyone's going to freak out. We only get to see her reactions, we think, because, like, she's Ron's sister, so it makes sense. But then she gets scared of the diary, and we're just had to be like, oh, but like, how does she know what the diary is? You know what I mean? We start to see the pieces all fit together. And then we find out the creature is a basilisk, you know, through Hermione being really smart. And everything starts to be, the pieces start to put together, and it never loses the magic for me, no matter how many times I read it. It's just cool. And I also think it's really interesting how, like, the basilisk was kind of like the creature equivalent of Voldemort. Like, even the spiders are afraid of it and afraid to say the name of the basilisk. You know, they're even afraid of it. I think it's funny. I think it's cool that, like, even, you know, people are scared of it. And it's cool, like, Riddle made Ginny walk down to the Chamber of Secrets and just lie there, and, you know, eventually she was going to be killed by Voldemort. But it's cool how he worded it. Riddle even worded it as though when Ginny was writing into the diary, she was putting pieces of her soul into Riddle, and eventually Riddle started giving pieces of his soul to Ginny, which explains how Ginny was able to speak Parseltongue to get down to the Chamber of Secrets. He was like making her a temporary Horcrux in a way, which I think it's interesting. It's so intriguing how this magic system works. And of course, the anagram that Tom Marvolo Riddle is I am Lord Voldemort is so cool. That is so cool. That's the scene in the movie that I love, just him rearranging it. It is super cool. And it was interesting that Riddle is so against Muggleborns and half-blood wizards, despite him being a half-blood himself, which we'll find out later in the books why he was so opposed, because of his mother and his father being, you know, a Muggle. But it's just a little bit of karma that he was taken down by a Muggleborn witch's power. You know, Lily, her love, he was taken down by a Muggleborn witch. That was karma. One complaint I have about the end, though, is how fast the fight scene between Harry and Riddle and the basilisk goes. In the movie, it's this big epic thing. He climbs up the statue and he stands up top and he kills the snake. But in the book, it happens in like two seconds. It's over like that, and plot conveniences galore. The sword lands right in his hand. The bird just magically can heal him. You know what I mean? First of all, how does Fawkes even get in? Ron doesn't see him go in. Like, when Harry gets back with Fawkes, he's like, where did the bird come from? He didn't see it? How did he get in? Like, Harry at 12 years old is able to overtake a giant basilisk with a sword. And that's it. Like, okay. And, you know, Riddle says, I always knew it'd come down to this, you know, Harry dying at Lord Voldemort's hands. You know, which again foreshadows the prophecy that neither can live while the other one survives. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the ending. Sorry again for this being all over the place. I had less notes than the first book. I was kind of trying around with just putting instead of writing a script, just putting little plot points and talking about it myself. I don't know which one I like. I'll see when I edit it. Just thought I'd share. Okay, anywho. The scene where they finally get Ginny safe and she hugs her parents and everyone's happy and safe and fine. It's really heartwarming. And, you know, Ginny is super nervous that she's going to get in trouble, and Harry and them all try to go and explain that it wasn't Ginny's fault, and Dumbledore stops them before they can even explain. He knows it's not Ginny's fault. He assures them. He constantly reassures. Just makes them feel comfortable, makes them feel safe, makes them feel loved. You know, he tells her that even more experience witches and wizards than her, than an 11-year-old girl had been fooled by Voldemort, that it's okay, that you didn't know any better. And it's cool that Harry tells Dumbledore that Lockhart had a memory charm backfire, and Dumbledore says, well, he was impaled by his own sword. So Dumbledore, you know, alludes, he knows that Lockhart was doing memory charms, but I think it's just funny how he didn't say anything, you know what I mean? Didn't say anything, Dumbledore. Now the scene when Harry's really nervous that he's so much like Riddle, and Dumbledore's like, well, you are not like him at all, you know, you chose to be a good guy. I like actually teared up because that's the whole thing. Dumbledore assures Harry constantly, you know, Voldemort lost the Wizarding War in the 7th one because he couldn't love, because he wanted to be bad, where Harry won because he was good. And you know, when Harry freed Dobby, it's always a really emotional scene and cool scene. You know, Dobby had no legal loyalty to Harry. He didn't have to help him, but he did because he was a good person. And then Harry thus helped Dobby in the end, and Dobby protected Harry again. You know, we get to see Dobby's evolution to being tied to a master because of legal reasons, you know, because he's tied to this family, and now he starts to experience freedom for the first time, loyalty to people who are nice to him instead of just ruled by the sword, you know what I mean? The feast always warms my heart. We don't get to see much of the point system. The point system doesn't really matter much except in like the first book and a little bit in a future book, I think, but it was cool to see, you know, the feast again. Everyone's happy, safe, loved, they're all friends, you know, Hagrid comes back. It's just a really wholesome moment. All right, so now we're going to talk about some things that I didn't really could fit into another section that I'm going to talk about. So in the first 2 books, there's always something that happens that separates the Golden Trio. Like in the first book, they're going down to the trapdoor. Ron gets separated because he sacrifices himself with the Quidditch match, or the chess match, and then Hermione gets separated because she can't go on with Harry. Ends up Harry's alone. In the second book, Hermione gets petrified. We get rid of Hermione. She's like not in the book for like 80 pages because she's petrified. Then we see Ron. He gets separated because he can't get through the rocks because Harry and him get separated. The rocks fall. Again, Harry is alone. So there's always some reason that Harry has to be alone in fighting the big boss battle. Also, so they bought Harry a new broomstick in the first one, a new very, very, very expensive broomstick so he could play on the Quidditch team, but they couldn't help Ron out and get him a wand, even though him not having a proper wand was harmful to other students and people at the school. Like, you're showing your favoritism, honey bun sugar plum, it makes no sense why you couldn't give Ron a wand. Also, Ron says in this book that if he was put in Slytherin, he would have gone home, and in the first book, Draco says if he was put in Hufflepuff, he would have gone home. So it just really shows where their loyalties lie, you know, where their heads at. I thought it was a cool connection. Also, Harry can't go to a single Quidditch match without someone trying to kill him. In the first book, it's Quirrell. The second book, it's Dobby. Third book, we can talk about that later in the future book, but it's the Dementors, you know what I mean? He just can't go anywhere without someone trying to kill him. Also, why do they not stop the game as soon as they find out the rogue bludger is following Harry? Why don't they call everyone down and be like, oh, the game's called off till later because someone's trying to get murdered by a bludger. Why don't they just stop it immediately? They're like, oh, Hogwarts is the safest place ever. We value our students. We want to follow the rules. And then they just let him go when there's a bludger flying at him. I don't know. I also think it's cool that Dumbledore can see through the invisibility cloak when, like, Ron and Harry are hiding in Hagrid's hut with the invisibility cloak. It's just really funny, and it's cool to see how powerful Dumbledore is. You know, he can fly, he can see through cloaks. He can go invisible himself. He's a powerful wizard. I also love that his password to his dormitory, or his like office, is lemon drop, because we heard in the first book that he really loves, or that Dumbledore really loves lemon drops. Cool little quirky little connection. It's also interesting to see that, you know, out of all the Horcruxes Voldemort made, this Horcrux had a memory attached to it. You know, it's curious to think maybe some of the other Horcruxes had maybe not memories attached, but they maybe had something else to them. We just never explored it. And it's kind of strange that wizards don't have phones. They always brag about how they're so much better than muggles, but yet they don't have cars, really. Oh, they do have cars. they don't have other really forms of communication other than letters for owls. They don't have phones. You can't like magic like put your wand to your ear and communicate through wands. You think that'd be like a cool thing you could do? No. Oh well, but they're so much better than muggles. And one last thing I want to talk about. I love the subplot of like trying to figure out Percy has a girlfriend, you know what I mean, he's dating Penelope, because it manages all. One thing I love about these books is that it manages to keep everything very innocent. And even though you're going through all these really traumatic things, ideas, it's still very innocent. We get to see, you know, the subplot of them figuring out that their brother has a girlfriend, which I think is funny. I think it's cute. Anyway, this video is all over the place. Kind of tired. I'm not feeling the best right now, but I had fun talking to you guys, having a little discussion about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Is very good, very good, very good. Alright guys, bye. I love you.